This is the Shoulda Bet More podcast, presented by Gold Boys Network. Here's your host, Will Hill.
Welcome to the Shoulda Bet More podcast, presented by Gold Boys. Coming up on the show, Jeff Parles from Sports by the Book, our buddy, will join us. We will go over the MLB offseason. Juan Soto is a Met. Was just finishing up the Monday pod when that news broke. Went back on to add a few thoughts to that. So I will start with that, and we'll see what Jeff thinks here in a minute. And I'll just reiterate a lot of what I said on Monday and add a few things. And that is, for as long as we can remember, for as long as we've been following baseball, the Mets have been second fiddle, the younger brother to the Yankees, and that really changed Sunday night. I mean, that changed in a big way, because you're talking about a player that's one of the best players in baseball in his prime, and man, scary to think about 25, maybe not even in his prime yet, in Juan Soto. And the Mets stole him. The Mets stole him away from the Yankees. And, the Yankees, I think the Yankee fan is in shock right now, because the Yankee fan, I think some of them are in denial. And I've been one, like, hey, they don't act like the old Yankees. It's been since 2009, not just since they won a World Series, but since they've been aggressive spending. Yeah, they signed Cole. Yeah, they kept Judge. Yeah, they traded for Stanton. But the Harpers, the Machados, the Seagers, the Freemans, the Otanis of the world, it's always an excuse. Otani doesn't want to come west. Freeman doesn't want to be a Yankee. This guy doesn't want to be a Yankee. And the Yankee fan, I think, has been in denial until now, until they realized, hey, this is different. Things are changing. We're no longer the biggest spender. The Dodgers have really taken the place of what the Yankees used to be, and the Mets are now the new kid on the block. And this is the first time the Yankees, it's one thing to not sign Harper off somebody's team or not sign Seager off somebody's team and not improve your own team. And I think if they played this properly and were aggressive, they would have won a World Series. In the last 7 or 8 years, they've been close enough. But this is different. They lost one of their own. They bled their own blood, and they're starting to feel the effects of that. Hey, things are different, and you're seeing the reaction from the Yankee fans. Anyone that knows a Yankee fan or is friends with them, the reactions are different in terms of, oh, the Mets overpaid. He wanted to be a Met anyway. I don't want him anyway. He's dead. All these different things. Yeah, I mean, the Yankee fan is a bitter ex right now. The Yankee fan is a bitter ex. And to take that analogy a little further, the Mets came in and they stole the Yankees' girlfriend. I mean, that's really what happened. The Mets came in and they stole the Yankees' girlfriend right off their arm. And it's a tough pill for the Yankees to swallow. It's a new world, and they can come up with all these different scenarios. All right, we're going to get Max Fried and Christian Walker, and you hear all the names Bregman. And recording this Tuesday night, by the time you listen to this, maybe some guys have signed either with the Yankees or elsewhere. Yankees will do something, but there is no replacing Soto. There is no plan B. Yes, they can still put a competitive team on the field and take that money. And look, in a weird way, when you tip your hand and it gets out that you were offering $760 million, okay, let's spend that money somewhere else. Now you put some pressure on, hey, there's no excuse to just come away with, maybe Bellinger and a pitcher and we go about our business. Yankees need to be aggressive here to keep their fans happy, I would think. And they could still put a good team on the field when you consider they have Judge, and you can use that money to maybe get 2 or 3 players. I don't know this idea that they desperately need a pitcher. They had a top 10 ERA in baseball last year. Like they got pretty good pitching. They do more with less. I know the long-term deals never seem to work out with pitching. I wouldn't be opposed to adding Fried or, one of these pitchers, but the Yankees can improve. I just don't think I just think Judge and Soto was the deodorant for so much. The bullpen, the rotation at times, the base running, the fielding, more so the base running and the fielding than the rotation. Like I said, the rotation was good more than it was not last year. Soto and Judge were the deodorant, and that deodorant is gone now for the Yankees. So the Yankees, it's hard to sit here and project what the Yankees are and even what the Mets are. And I'll get to the Mets aspect of this in a second, because the teams are incomplete. What are the Mets going to do? What are the Yankees going to do? There's still a lot of moves to be made. There's still a lot of puzzle pieces to be filled in. So to sit here and give an analysis of a team is impossible, because we don't have the team. But a major blow for the Yankees, an absolute major blow, and a major ego blow for the Yankee fans who are realizing, hey, this is not the Yankees I grew up with. If you're of a certain age where you just expected them to get every player, and that has changed for a long time now. And now we're at the point where not only are you not getting the best players, you're losing your best players, and you're losing your best players to the crosstown rival, the Mets, who a team you've kind of looked down your nose on for a long time. So very tough for the Yankees. The Mets aspect of this, and it is going to be tough for the Yankees, because to continue the girlfriend analogy, the fact that Soto was just kind of a one-night stand, man, that was one fun summer of baseball. To watch Soto and Judge just mash together for a summer, that was great, and that's something you're never going to have again. And that is, again, really, really difficult for the Yankee fan to swallow. The Met aspect of this, and I'll get to the betting odds. I don't know that there's a bet to be made of this, but there are World Series odds, American League, National League, and division odds. So I'll get to those in a minute, and I'll talk to Jeff, see what he thinks about any of this. The Met aspect is same sort of thing where they still need pitching. They still have holes in the rotation. They still have holes in the bullpen. And maybe the tiebreaker for Soto, in addition to getting the most money, maybe Soto just believed in Cohen to spend once he signed more than, hey, if I sign with the Yankees, Hal's going to keep the wall in his pocket, which I really think was a real possibility based on previous behavior. I don't know how aggressive the Yankees would have gotten or continued once they got Soto, and Cohen's going to be aggressive. So can he go out and add a Burns or a Fried or one of these other pitchers? He's going to need pitching. And I mentioned the other day, they're no lock. I mean, they still might be third best in their own division. The odds, somewhat agree with that. And I hadn't seen the odds until just now, actually. The NL East odds, Braves are still the short shot plus 145, then the Mets at plus 170, then the Phillies at plus 210. So again, I mean, talk about actually betting this stuff. These are bets that won't cash until October. We're sitting here, a couple weeks before Christmas. Is it worth betting this stuff now? No, but just for the sake of an exercise, would you take the Mets? I think it's based on who you think they're going to get. If you think they're going to add enough pieces to win a division, I guess that would be the bet. Phillies at 2-1 looks interesting, but you get the idea where, hey, they get the splash with Soto and they are set up for a long time. You think to be really good with the willingness to spend, the farm system. Seems like Stearns, the GM, really knows what he's doing. They're going in the right direction, but are they like a lock to be in the World Series or be back in the NLCS? They're absolutely not a lock. They're not a lock to win their own division. So we'll see what they come up with in terms of the rest of the team. And as far as the AL East, I find these odds ridiculous for the American. The Yankees are still the favorite, not only in the AL East, but in the American League. Yankees are plus 300 to win the American League at DraftKings. They are the short shot. I would not bet that with your money. Oh my goodness, that's a terrible number. And the Yankees are plus 950 to win it all. Meanwhile, the Mets are plus 850 to win it all. As far as the AL East, Yankees are, again, the short shot plus 130, which I think is ridiculous. I don't even think they should be favored in division. Orioles plus 195. You could talk me into that. You could even talk me into one of the following two of Red Sox plus 550, Rays plus 750. They get McClanahan back. They've got all those pitchers. I know, they kind of take turns being injured and Wander Franco's out of the mix, but I'm looking to fade the favorite. If there was a yes-no on the Yankee line, like a Yankee versus the field to win the AL East, boy, if I could lay minus 160, minus 170 on the Yankees not winning division, that's probably the direction I would go because, again, they're going to add pieces here or there, but you got a healthy year from Judge. Doesn't mean you're going to get it again. And this is the thing with not having Soto. If you miss Judge for a month, for 6 weeks, you're dead because you don't have a good enough team, barring some spree here. And the Yankee fan is trying to talk themselves, we're going to add 4 or 5 guys and we're going to really load up. We're going to get Crochet and Fried and Bregman and all these. They start listing, half an all-star team. I don't buy it. I'll believe it when I see it. Kyle Tucker, we'll see. I'll see it when I believe it. They'll get somebody, they'll add a couple guys. They'll try to appease you, but they're not going to, they're not going to go out and just add every guy on your Christmas list here. That's just not how they operate anymore. And they're just not that motivated to do so. They're going to field a team that if everything breaks right, they're going to win their 90-plus games, maybe a chance for the division, maybe a chance to get in the playoffs. I think they will have a chance to get in the playoffs. And once that happens, who knows? Luck of baseball, short series, anything can happen. But they are far from a favorite here. And it's interesting, this time last year, before they got Soto, and it was almost 1 year to the day of getting Soto and losing Soto, which is interesting. The Yankees were 16-1 to win the World Series before they got Soto. Now, a year later, they lose them, and they're still like 9-1 plus 950. To me, that makes no sense. Again, you're projecting they're going to add somebody, but it's going to be hard. It's going to be really hard to fill that production. And do you trust Cashman and Howe and these, this brain trust to do that, to spend wisely, to bring in these players? I mean, I just think a couple off seasons ago, they thought Josh Donaldson was the missing piece. And you go back to some of these trade deadline moves with Frankie Montas and Andrew Benintendi. These moves at the deadline never seem to work out. Their big move this year was Mark Leiter Jr. He couldn't even, make the team in the postseason until there was an injury. They're not good on these moves. They're not good on these margins. They're just not that smart of a team. They're not that well run of a team. They need moves that you can't screw up. And Soto was a move you can't screw up. And when you start having to color outside the lines and get creative and, as far as like being good at your job and finding value, that's just not the Yankees' strength. So we'll see what they come up with. Winter meetings here, I would imagine some moves, some pieces start to fall in place over the next couple of days for the Yankees and for the Mets. And, we'll see how these other teams shape up. But man, I wouldn't be betting these numbers on the Yankees. That's for sure. I think all of these numbers are a little short. And, it's just a situation with the Yankees where you could say they made a respectable offer, and they did. But did they offer just enough to come up short? It's like a baseball game. There's a winner and there's a loser. And you could have all the effort in the world. If somebody wins and somebody loses, Soto ended up on the Mets and he's not on the Yankees. So Still, Yankees are going to be reeling from that for a while. The 6-week span of losing the World Series and losing it the way you lost it with just that meltdown in the 5th inning of Game 5, and then losing Soto to rub salt in the wound 6 weeks later, that is a rough stretch. That is a long way from that Saturday night in mid-October where Soto, 2 outs, 2 strikes, 2 men on, hits a home run to put the Yankees in the World Series for the first time in 15 years. A great at-bat, a bomb of a home run. He's screaming at the dugout. He's jumping up and down. Everyone's jumping up and down. The dugout empties, and you're going to the World Series. And then you blink, the World Series is over, you lose, and Soto's a Met. That is a very tough 6-7 week stretch here for the Yankees, and it's one I'm not sure they're going to recover from in the near future. So we'll see what Jeff Parles thinks about this. Everything else, we'll talk to him. That is next. This is Shoulda Bet More podcast. All right, we are back. Shoulda Bet More podcast. As we bring in Jeff Parles, we do have some new news, and that is Max Fried now, as I'm sure you've heard, member of the New York Yankees, an 8-year deal, $200 and something million, the most expensive deal for a left-handed pitcher ever. So, Jeff, sports by the book. We'll get to Soto here in a minute, but your immediate reaction here to the Max Fried deal, and thanks for coming on.
You're welcome. First off, winter. It's always good when the winter meetings actually produce stuff, right? Well, you had that 2-3 year stretch where the winter meetings were dull as dull can be. The years that Machado and Harper were on the market at the same time was really the biggest culprit of that. But it's good to see these moves already happening. Look, my initial reaction is the Yankees needed to pivot, and this was as good of a pivot, at least with the rotation, as you could have asked. It was either him or Burns. I don't love giving big years to starting pitchers just because of the high end variance and the injuries that can happen to high end pitchers. But look, the Yankees have a very formidable 1-2 if Fried stays healthy. Will as much as people like to get on Cole from time to time, he's still a high end ace, and Fried is one of the best left handed pitchers in baseball. So the Yankees did very well. Pivoting after losing out on Soto, and look, they still got a lot of work to do, but the American League, the one good thing for the Yankees is the American League, at least on the surface, looks as bad as it's been in a very long time going into next year. And just adding any sort of talent to replace, again, I'll see what they do offensively speaking, but Fried is a nice step where the offseason got off to as bad of a start as possible and losing Soto. Honestly, what it looks like, it would have been either the Mets or the AL East. So the Yankees were going to end up in a bad spot regardless if they didn't get back Soto. But this is a good first recovery step for them.
Yep. Look, it's probably not going to age well, but these long-term deals never age well. If you're the Yankees, you can't worry about 6, 7, 8 years from now. It'll be good the next few years. It'll help this year. You hope he stays healthy. Now, one thing is these playoff games. Yeah, it's nice to start a series with Cole and with Fried if you can get there, which I think they should probably be able to get there depending on the rest of this offseason plays out. You better hope Judge stays healthy. But the starting pitching, like it's not like the 1990s anymore where you build around starting pitching. These starting pitchers only go like 5 innings and you turn it over to the bullpen. So it's not like you build it around the rotation the same way you used to, but hey, it's a step. As far as the next step, does this make a pitcher, a Heel, a Schmidt, both of them available in a Tucker deal? If you're advising Brian Cashman, and I think he needs all the advising he can get, what is step 2, step 3 here of this offseason to try to get back to where you were last year?
Well, look, which left-handed bat do you want? Do you want Cody Bellinger? Do you want Tucker? I mean, that's kind of where your head is at this point. And look, the Yankees and again, Garrett Crochet. Now that the Yankees have signed Max Fried, Garrett Crochet does not need to be a target anymore for the Yankees. But look, this is an offseason now where the Yankees have to get an outfield bat. And here's the deal, though. You better get a long-term deal done before you agree on a trade.
Yes.
I know Soto is a unique talent, and you take that chance. And look, you got a World Series appearance out of it. The Yankees, look, we'll never know. If the Yankees don't choke away Game 1, maybe that series is completely different. We never know. Will,
or if they catch the ball in Game 5.
Yeah, I don't know if they would have been able to win both in LA, but they would have at least made it interesting, to say the very least. But look, you're in a scenario where I'm kind of stunned Kyle Tucker is available, that the Astros are making him available. But do you really think the Astros are going to make a deal with the Yankees unless if the Yankees just overpay out the behind? In all honesty, Will, I just don't see that. In all honesty, I think Bellinger is the most logical candidate at this point, and look, we'll see how it plays out. But the Yankees need that big bopper from the left side because they do not even remotely have that at this point. And you just mentioned if Aaron Judge gets hurt next year, I mean, geez, that lineup is pretty bleak without some additions here. And again, the Yankees benefit from the fact that the American League at this point, I mean, just look at the rest of the AL East. The Red Sox are still far off from being a legitimate contender. The Orioles win a playoff series before we take them seriously at this point, and they're probably losing their best pitcher in Burns. The Blue Jays, all right, the Blue Jays got Andres Jimenez, nice little auxiliary piece. Great defensive player, as we know, but he has regressed pretty badly the last 2 years offensively. The Rays, I have no idea what the hell the Rays are going to be this year, especially playing without a real home. And then you look at the rest of the league. The American League Central's a disaster zone. And if the White Sox improve at all, that division's not going to get 3 playoff teams again. And then the AL West, I mean, look, the Astros are going to be worse. The Mariners can't be taken seriously until they actually do something. The Rangers clearly look like they took advantage of the 1 year they had to win it. And then the A's are the A's and the Angels are the Angels. I mean, this league is a disaster. I don't think I think there's barely 3 playoff caliber teams and 6 have to make it in the American League. So the Yankees still have as good of a shot as anyone, even though the roster as it's currently constructed, it's an 88 win roster, but that might be good enough to get you to 4 seed at this rate in the AL.
So your best guess would be, sounds like Bellinger, then you need a first baseman, Walker maybe, and then that's your team. I mean, to me, that's not enough.
Look, I mean, I don't see them going after Alonso. I just don't see it. I think Pete would be a really good fit there. I think he's better defensively than people give him credit for. And having the ability to go Oppo Boppo in that ballpark would be amazing for him. He did 45 homers at Yankee Stadium. But Walker makes sense, man. Good defensive player. Doesn't get to do for how good he is on offense because he played in Arizona. So, I mean, that would probably be of the free agent first baseman that I'd probably look at if I'm the Yankees.
Still not enough for me. I mean, Bellinger and Walker, you're better.
Well, here's the thing, though, Will. Like, you lose Soto, nothing's going to be enough.
I know that's 100% true. It's 100%.
I mean, and the fact that Soto goes cross town, and I mean, look, that's Sunday night is going to be looked back on if the Mets end up going on some sort of run where championships are included. The moment that the balance of power in New York baseball will change for a very long time. As long as Steve Cohen is alive and is owns the Mets, and obviously his wife Alex has a lot to do with it, according to all the reports on how the fact that Soto the fact that the Mets are looked at as this family first organization. I mean, just saying that is kind of crazy. Just 6 years ago, before the sale, the Mets' best off-season acquisition was Colin Cowgill, for goodness sakes. I mean, it's just crazy how this has turned because of one family. Let's be real. One family has turned the Mets from a laughing stock now to, okay, we got to take this team seriously. And now the Mets have to win. They have to win. It's as simple as that, Will.
I'll get to some of the odds here, and we'll see if there's a betting angle because at least DraftKings does have title odds, American League title, National League title, and division odds, which I think are interesting. But Soto, what do you think? Was it as simple as the money? You hinted at family first. Was it? I think there's something to this idea that, hey, Hal's history here of not signing the Seagers, the Harpers, the Machados, not spending. Soto maybe had some concern that, hey, I'm going to sign here. Then Hal's going to put his wallet in his pocket, which, hey, if I were Soto, I'd be thinking that. And that Cohen's actually going to keep spending. What's your take on what the ultimate deal breaker was here to get Soto from the Yankees to the Mets?
I think the money, I think people who are going, it was the money, I think are missing the point. It's in the grand scheme of things, it's $5 million was the difference, according to all the offers. Yeah, the Yankees try to spread out over an extra year. But the money, and when it's all said and done, I don't think was the biggest factor. I think what Jeff Passan said to SVP on Sunday night is the biggest factor. I think the Mets have the brighter future than the Yankees do. Even with, I mean, look, if the Yankees had Soto, obviously you're looking at the next 15, 16 years totally differently. But just look at what the Mets are right now. You have a good culture over there. You have Lindor wrapped up for another 7 years. You have a bunch of young talent on top of it. I mean, Nimmo's there another 5 years. Vientos has become this high again. If he's anything like he was last year, he's a high-end corner infielder now. And look, you have stable ownership and a stable front office. And look, I know that Hal refuses to fire, whatever way you want to go with Cashman. But again, it definitely seems like the Mets are the in franchise right now for all these players. And look, the Mets aren't done. It doesn't matter to me. Like the Mets are going to sign one other big ticket guy, just depends on who it is. And I'm fascinated more so than anything the rest of this offseason for the Mets. All right, you got Soto. It's the biggest move in franchise history. The only one that's even remotely close is when they traded for Piazza. I like this is best signing Beltran in 05 on steroids here, Will. And you beat the Yankees. You announced that, all right, we want to be the top dogs of New York. This is how we're going to do it. I just wonder, as long as Cohen's pockets are open, and there's no reason to think it's not, that this is just the beginning of this offseason for the Mets and the beginning of really, look, the window's open. As long as Lindor's there, it's a 7-year window at this point for this Met team, Will.
NL East odds, and the Mets are plus 850 to win the whole thing. I wouldn't touch that unless you really think they're going to go out and get everybody.
You'll get better odds during the season.
Yes.
We all know
that. For the NL East, Braves are plus 145, Mets are plus 170, Phillies are plus 210. Let's take away the idea that you're tying up money from now till October, and that makes anything pretty much unbettable unless it's a great bet. Do those odds look right to you? Is anything, in theory, worth a bet?
Atlanta should be the favorite still because they're still loaded with all their talent. They were just so freaking injured last year. I just wonder, though, because of all the injuries to the rotation, and now you're losing. Look, as good as Strider's been when he's been healthy in his major league career, they just lost their most reliable starter. Like that can't be discounted for the Braves here. Now, look, the interesting thing with the Mets is now they're just, I think the way David Stearns is going to operate is he's going to try to do what he did last year with Severino and Minaya more times than not with his starting rotation, where you have one ace in Senga, who you hope is healthy. I mean, apparently they're in on Sasaki, and apparently Sasaki's representation, like Jeremy Hefner, which is what an asset that's turned into for the Mets, where Hefner, it's kind of amazing. I mean, Hefner survived 3 managers now. Like that doesn't happen very often with a pitching coach. I still think the Mets need one more high-end starter. I don't know if it's Sasaki. I don't know if it's Burns. I don't know if you just trade for Crochet. Because I mean the Mets have a ton now they can trade for Crochet. I mean, I know Brett Beatty had a down year, but a package of Beatty and one of the outfielders they got for Verlander and one other piece probably is enough to get him there from the White Sox. And now they're really not even competing against anyone else because the Yankees are out. I guess the Red Sox are in, but the Mets system's better than the Red Sox at this point. But look, the odds are right. I think the Phillies missed their window. I think it's safe to say that at this point. I think the Phillies needed to win one of these last 3 years, and they didn't do it. I think that's it. I think their window is open. They're kind of on the path of, this is kind of what happened to them at the end of their last run, right? Where they just went one shorter round every single year. Next year, probably on pace to lose in the wild card round, and that's that. So it's a 2-horse race to me. I think the Mets and the Braves are the 2 best teams in the division moving forward. I still think all 3 of those teams win the division or make the playoffs, I should say. The one interesting factor more than anything, Will, would really the NL playoff picture more than anything is, do the Washington Nationals improve next year? That's really the wild card for me. Because if the Nats turn from what they were this year into the quality of a high 70s win team, then that's when things can get very interesting in the National League wild card chase with the Mets and the Phillies and the Braves, because then they're going to not have as many gimme games because the Mets and the Phillies owned the Nationals last year.
Yeah, and the Nats are in a different division. They could compete and be much closer. It's just that division might swallow them up. And I think they
Will, if they were in the National League Central, I'd pick them to finish second with the
yeah,
way everything's configured right now.
I agree. I agree with a chance to win it because I just saw I think they just won the lottery too. I don't know who's the
Yeah, they'll get the other Matt Holliday son, Ethan Holliday, probably.
Oh, is that who it is? Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not up to date on the prospects. How about
Well,
America?
it's just Will, over the next few years, just assume that Matt Holliday's kids are just going to be once every 2-3 years at this point.
All right, that'll make it easier. Uh anything else baseball wise? Any feeling on where any of these other guys goes before we get a couple football things and get you out of here?
Really, no. I think the biggest thing more than anything, I was stunned at the amount of money that Adames got. Um, I'm very happy that he didn't end up on the Mets. I'd much rather just have them run it back with Alonso long term than Adames. Guy on the wrong side of 30 as a middle infielder kind of scares me. I get why the Giants did it, but boy, that's a lot of money for a player like that who's coming off his best year of his career. Look, I think at this point, Will, it's the NL, barring a surprise in the NL Central. I mean, look, we have to operate under the fact that the Mets, the Braves, the Phillies, the Dodgers, and the Padres, in one order or another, are clearly the 5 best teams in this league. And however it shoves out, that's what it's going to be. And then look, whoever's there in the NL Central, I'd love to see the Cubs be aggressive. We know that is not going to happen because I think they're the only one in that division that's really capable of catching with the Brewers at this point. The Pirates are never going to spend as long as Nutting owns the team. What the Cardinals are doing is a disgrace to that fan base at this point. And the Reds are the Reds. So I'm just curious to see how those top 5 teams in the NL battle the rest of this offseason before making any proclamations of what's going to happen in 2025.
College football, any issues with what the committee did, SMU, Bama, the seeding, and anyone you like here for these round 1 games?
So I have no issue with SMU over Bama, just because we have to just think about this from a business perspective. If you KO SMU and put Bama in, the conference championship games are done. So I get it. Nope. Look, Bama's better than SMU. Ole Miss is better than SMU. South Carolina's better than SMU. All those teams I just mentioned are better than Indiana as well. But look, what are you going to do? You don't lose 3 games. Sorry, just don't lose 3 games, and you get in. And no problem with any of those SEC teams being left out. My biggest issue by a wide margin is Penn State being seeded over Ohio State. That is far and away my biggest issue with this. I know that Penn State, when it's all said and done, Penn State loses to number 1 and number 6 in the final rankings. Okay, I get it. I know Ohio State got the 8 seed, but I think they were 6 overall when it was all said and done. So their losses were high end. But Penn State lost at home to Ohio State. I don't care that Ohio State lost at home to Michigan. There's no rationalizing Ohio State being behind Penn State. And if we're looking at this from a gambling perspective, if you're Oregon, you're going to be, if Ohio State holds against Tennessee, you're what, a 1.5 point favorite in the quarterfinals? That's ridiculous to Oregon, where you gave them until Ohio State lost to Michigan, they were 1 and 2 in the rankings, and properly so the whole way through. So to me, that's the only issue I have. I think they should have flipped Ohio State and Penn State, and then he ended up with a pretty fair bracket all the way around. For the round 1 games, I think Notre Dame drills Indiana. I just don't think Indiana can match up with the Irish. Notre Dame is just way more athletic than they are, Will. And I expect Notre Dame to run them out. I have no sense in the Penn State SMU game. Penn State's a lot better, but it's Franklin in a gigantic game. So who knows what will happen there. I like Clemson plus the points against Texas and a little sprinkle on the money line. That kind of lines up for me that Texas could very easily choke that game altogether. Texas played 2 good teams all year. They lose to Georgia twice, including Gunner, the backup, in the second half of that SEC title game. I had Georgia plus 3, and look, as much as I think Beck is overrated, as soon as I saw that play at the end of the half, I'm like, I'm done. I can't possibly win Georgia plus 3 at this point, and they win outright. Ohio State should run Tennessee out, but if we get a bad Will Howard game, that upset is possible. I would be surprised if Tennessee pulled it off. But you get a bad Will Howard game, anything's in play for that round one game in Ohio, at the shoe at that last game of the weekend.
Yeah, and I think Ohio State, their offensive line versus the front of Tennessee could be an issue. And I thought Herb Street made a good point on the selection show, which I think is still going on from Sunday. That was man, it took us forever before they finally told us some teams. If it doesn't go well early for Ohio State, I mean, they could be a little tight. Those fans could turn on them, so that is one to watch. Quickly before we get you out of here,
I will say, though, if Oregon gets Tennessee, that's a gift for Oregon. I don't see how Tennessee can possibly beat Oregon. I just don't see it. Because Oregon, like you just said, there'll be no tightness from Oregon. They've been the best team all year. And it's so funny. Dylan Gabriel last year at Oklahoma, I was like, you know what? This guy is he's just a classic college compiler, like statistically wise. Now he goes to Oregon. I'm like, well, you know what? I expect him to make every big play when he has to, and he has so far this year. Just a difference in how good this Oregon team is comparatively to every team Gabriel's been on before this year.
Anything Rams 49ers or anything else in the NFL before we let you go?
I'll tell you this. Don't laugh at me. The Giants against the Ravens, real quick. So, Will, the Giants are the biggest underdog they've been since before the Super Bowl existed. 1966 was the last time they were this big of an underdog.
Is that at home or was that overall? I thought I saw that stat at home.
For both, it works for both. Because one of them, they had two games in 66. They were 14.5-point dogs at the St. Louis Cardinals of all teams. And they were 14-point dogs at home against Dallas, who obviously I believe that was the year of the Ice Bowl, 66. So that was a great Dallas team, obviously. We're talking about 15 points in an NFL game right now, Will. I know the Ravens are capable of smashing the Giants to smithereens here, but I'm taking the Giants plus the points against the Ravens. Look, if the Ravens beat the Giants 38-3, all right, you know what? I got a little too cute. But it worked for me last week with Carolina getting all those points against Philadelphia. And Carolina should have won the damn game, in all honesty. Or at least should have at least made Philadelphia drive the field at the end down one with 40 seconds left. And legit just makes that play. But yeah, I like the Giants this week. And, oh, God, I'm really going to hate myself on this one. I like the Jets as well against the Jaguars because this Jet team is winning 2 of their last 4 games to screw up the draft pick as much as humanly possible, Will. They almost did it last week. They were very close. They're very close. And quite frankly, they should have won that game in Miami. But if you're only laying 3 with the Jets against this, I mean, how Jacksonville won last week is beyond me. I have no idea how Tennessee managed to screw that game up that badly.
Because they're the Titans, that's how.
That's the only explanation, right? Like, I mean, it was out. That was the worst game of the year by far, by the way. That Jacksonville Tennessee game. But I mean, it's ugly. I mean, the Jets is a road favorite. I mean, come on now. But those are the two. Those are the two that stand out to me, at least as we do this early in the week. Oh, and by the way, I do want to throw one thing out there with the college football playoff real quick. I bet Notre Dame at 12-1 to win the title, Will. I bet the Irish to win it all. I really do think when push comes to shove here, the winner's coming from either the Rose Bowl, which is going to be Oregon, Ohio State if chalk prevails in round 1, or the Sugar Bowl, which is Georgia, Notre Dame. I really think the winner's coming from one of those 4 teams. And Notre Dame, if you're getting Notre Dame double digits to 1 at this point, I think that's a little bit long. Especially where, I don't know if you saw this, and then Jeff Fogel totally said that the line was nonsense from DK. I mean, Notre Dame was favored against Georgia in the Sugar Bowl in the look-ahead line.
Right.
I think that's a little bit aggressive, even without Beck in that game. But I would take Notre Dame if I'm not having to lay points in that game against Georgia. Notre Dame should be favored against Penn State or Boise in the semis. And then I'm basically in a hedge position against Oregon or Ohio State in the national title game. So I think that Notre Dame number is the best of all for any of these college football bets at this rate.
Jeff, appreciate it, man. All right, I'll ask. What the hell? Jets quarterback and coach next year is who?
Tyrod Taylor is the week 1 starter for the Jets. Your guess is as good as mine on who the head coach is. I have no
And then
idea.
what? It's a bridge year. They draft a quarterback, let Taylor play for a year, or they try to draft one next year.
I look, Tyrod Taylor's on the contract next year, so that's
Okay.
why I'm going with that. And look, Tyrod Taylor is a very respected quarterback in this league. I'm not saying he's any good, like he's about the 22nd best starter when he's playing, but he's a respected guy. So I expect Tyrod Taylor to be the number one quarterback going into next year. Head coach wise, God, I expect them to screw it up. It's just a matter of how badly they screw it up, Will. Because I'm convinced at this point that Ben Johnson's going to be the coach of the Bengals. Okay, so that's why I'm convinced that the Bengals missed the playoffs. They fired Taylor and they bring in Johnson to be the head coach. The Bears are the wild card at this point because if they don't get Johnson, Vrabel and Joe Brady make the most sense at that point. But if Ohio State doesn't make the national championship game, Ryan Day's getting fired and Mike Vrabel's going to be the number one choice there. So there's a lot of the Jets are going to be down the totem pole on the job availabilities this offseason. Cincinnati, I expect to be open, will be ahead of them. Chicago should be available, even though they should be ahead of them, even though they're dysfunctional. And then the Jets are going to be in the pocket with Jacksonville, the Giants, New Orleans, Tennessee, if they decide to one and done Callahan. I mean, there's going to be a bunch of there's always one shock job also available that will be ahead of the Jets as well. But I mean, look, there's going to be 4 very similar jobs that are available, and it's just going to be a matter of are the elite high-end coordinators going to be which one of those jobs do they want, or do they just want to stay in their coordinator job moving forward?
Jeff, appreciate the time, man. Congrats on Soto. Enjoy this new Mets regime. Let everyone know where they can find you.
Yeah, Jeff Parles on Twitter, X, whatever it is, whatever we're calling it these days. And it's Sports by the Book on YouTube, Thursday through Monday is where you can find me.
All right, appreciate the time. Thanks.
Of course, Will.
All right, that'll do it. Rate, review, subscribe. Be back Friday. See you then.